do you want to chat about, maybe potentially the other markets? You just chatted about, of course, depression, but you want to chat about PTSD and some of the other ones?
Yeah, so I mean, PTSD, obviously, we saw here in the United States, the United States military just invested several $1 million into further studies into psychedelics as a treatment for PTSD for the veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And so I think that's where you really start to see where attention is really starting to be gained in some very interesting areas here, at least here in the United States. I mean, if the military is starting to pay attention to it, then I think that's where you see where there's a lot of traction being gained here. So again, that space right there, as far as addiction, I mean, these are things obviously that we know millions of people across the globe really face with, and unfortunately, their lives are taken far too short. So I think this is really where, when I talk about the big picture of psychedelics, this is a big part of it. The opportunity to truly revolutionize how we really treat mental health disorders and illnesses. I think it's becoming understood that a lot of the conventional drugs that we've been utilizing for the last several decades, they're only good at managing the problem. They're not necessarily good at treating the problem. And I think this is where psychedelics have the opportunity to really be a game changer here. And I think this is why it is so worth the efforts to pushing things forward with it and making sure that we get it pulled out of the shadows, because I think it does have the ability and the potential to really change society as a whole, which to me, that's what's more important than anything else to me. I mean, yes, the business opportunities and the monetization opportunities are exciting, but the ability to help create a better society for people from a mental perspective, that's just unmatched in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, it's unfortunate, but, a lot of the addiction, depression markets are growing. It's worth talking about,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, for psychedelic adoption. I always like talking about, the opioid kind of addiction and that kind of connection as well. A lot of those companies went through a pretty big class action lawsuit. Those big lawsuits out there, if you just simply Google them. And a lot of them are putting up money for psychedelic research and other types of addiction research. So I think that's great. I think that's going to help the space a lot. Is there anything you want to comment on that before we hop into other stuff?
No, again, it's just really keeping the momentum going forward here with the reform and continuing to shine as much light on this as possible, because I think as we do that and you start to catch the attention, I think another area that is very interesting to talk about is the investment side of things, in getting the right investors from that community involved in this, because I think that's really going to help continue the momentum. You look at some of these companies here that are really starting to get involved in the R&D of psychedelic drugs. These are companies that, quite honestly, could be doing a lot more if they were funded a little bit better, and so I think that's something that is going to be very important here going forward to ensure the growth, that it continues to grow at a very steady rate. It's going to need to be backed from somewhere, somehow. And so connecting with the right investors within that community out there is going to certainly be critical here going forward over time for the growth of the industry.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touch on exactly what the next questions are going to be about. They're a little bit more general. Obviously you're in the space, you see companies, I'm sure you see red flags, you see, obviously, green flags, I guess, if we're going that route. But, going in more depth, I'd love to chat. Obviously you guys come from the cannabis space, so you're familiar with how industries grow. But I'd love to chat, for people that are investing in the space kind of for the first time, or, even just new people to the space, that are looking at what companies to invest in. What would you look for in companies, to maybe throw your money at? And then also, what are some of those red flags that you would avoid? How do you look for someone who's just trying to catch the trend of psychedelics?
Right. So, I mean, coming from the investor and public relations world, for several years ago, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of different CEOs and leaders of companies and really help them sort of create the message for their shareholders and to attract new shareholders. And I think one of the things that I would always try to drive home with them was the importance of transparency. So as an investor, or me speaking with potential investors, what I always like to try to communicate to them is really look to see how transparent the company is, particularly at the top, at the leadership. It's very important to understand and recognize that the leaders of any company really fully understand and grasp what they are getting into here. We have to understand this is an underdeveloped industry right now. And again, if you are committed to it and if you have the passion for being involved in it, then I think that that's great, because listen, there's going to be some tough challenges along the road here. And I think what you saw in cannabis at the very beginning, when you had a lot of companies just sort of attaching themselves to the cannabis space for the sake of being a part of it, when the going got tough there and some of the challenges really just grew from a regulatory standpoint, you had a lot of companies just sort of jump out, and that left investors, unfortunately, in very difficult situations. And so you don't want to find yourself in the same situation here. And I think that's why it's so important to really understand to what level are the leaders and the CEOs of these companies that are getting into the psychedelic space, to what level are they committed, and to what level are they passionate about seeing this thing through. This isn't just about getting on board here because this is a train that's starting to leave the station. This is about wanting to be on the train and really see it all the way to its destination, so to speak. So I think that's definitely something that I would really want to drive home with any potential investors. And then as a potential investor myself, I would want them to ask, to what level are they willing to be committed to this? Understanding and recognizing the growth that still needs to happen. This is an industry that has just barely begun to sprout above the soil. So it's going to be quite some time before we can pick any fruit from the tree. So you got to be willing to be patient here. And to what level are you willing to be patient? But if you can find excitement and if you can find passion and joy in watching an industry grow really from the start, then I would absolutely say this is something to take a very hard, long look at. And we touched on earlier the business opportunities and the monetization opportunities that I think are going to eventually sprout up here. But again, that's a process. And so if you're looking for something that's going to change your portfolio overnight, maybe this isn't the right thing for you to look at. But if it's something that you're really willing to be invested in for the long term, then I would absolutely say this is the space that I would really want to take a look at.
Yeah. So here, let me give you a taste, I guess, and we'll see where you take it. One thing, in terms of red flags that I always look at is, where's the company spending their money? And I think that's important to, in a lot of ways, can outline, are they in it for the long term, or are they in it for the short term? And, for example, if a company is spending $10 million in marketing today, of course, unless they're a website or something along that lines, but why is a company that is opening up an addiction clinic in 2 years spending $10 million in marketing? And I would be very curious and probably ask those questions. Use of funds, where's money being spent is always a very important question. It's something that you want to answer. Are they spending it in the right way? Are they getting the right people? Or are they just trying to market their stock? And that's something that I would be careful in. You talk about the leadership, which is my other point for sure. And definitely, look at people that have had success, in growing industries as well. Of course, there's a lot of crossovers in cannabis, but make sure they're here and they want to be here. And a lot of people were expecting the kind of pharma side of cannabis and CBD, and are now seeing that in psychedelics and have moved over. Awesome. I think that's a great link. There's other people that are in it for the wrong reasons. I just want to point that out. But you touched on a lot of great points too, in terms of management and making sure you're putting the right horses in the race. What else? Give me an idea why someone might choose certain parts of the psychedelic industry. If you had to look at clinics, even news outlets like yourself or other ones, why are certain things interesting, and maybe why would you pick a company like yours?
So I mean, a company like ours, I think right now is playing a very important role in the advocacy of medicinal psychedelics and helping to really spread the word and get the important data and important information out there and get it in front of the eyes of the right people. I think that's something that we want to focus on as well. It's not just about throwing stuff out there just for the sake of throwing it out there because it's a great headline. There has to be a meaning behind it. And I think that's really where we separate ourselves, I think, from some of the other companies that are perhaps getting into this space to disseminate news and distribute news and be a part of this area of the industry. Us, again, this all ties into the bigger picture and helping and keeping things moving forward from a reform perspective, making sure the red tape continues to get removed, making sure that we actually are on a path to developing an industry here. So again, you don't want to put the cart before the horse. And I think it's important to understand where we are in the developmental stage right now and the role that we can play. So I think it's a very important role in terms, like I said, of being an ally for the clinics, the leaders, the people that are out there pushing the different initiatives, such as the chief petitioner for IP34, Sherry Bessie Eckert, who I came in contact with recently, and she's done all the hard work there along with her husband in terms of getting that initiative on the ballot in Oregon. Connecting with those people and those leaders and finding ways to really be an ally and help them and moving their initiatives forward. Because at the end of the day, to me, that really ties into the industry itself and helping the industry sort of evolve. So I think when you look at what we're establishing here with our platforms, I think it's very, very important. And like you said earlier, we've seen companies within the cannabis space sort of start out in the news and the advertising sort of space and sort of evolve into something entirely different over the course of time. And I think there's a real possibility, a real opportunity here that is going to happen, because the important thing that we're focusing on too is developing our network and really exploring every possible opportunity that either comes our way or perhaps comes our way and maybe makes more sense for someone else within our network. But nonetheless, at the end of the day, it's all about connecting everything, bringing everything together, and really helping this industry evolve.
Yeah, and I think you know, at the end of the day, you know, the kind of notion you're pushing here is help the industry grow, and obviously it'll help you grow. And I think that's really what you're after. And you know, did you want to mention? You briefly went over it, but it might be really interesting for people. You know, what is you know, this bill that's being pushed? What's in it? Why is it important? You want to chat about that a little bit and kind of what your involvement was with helping them? Obviously, you mentioned to me you chatted with her. You guys did of course, a little interview. But did you want to maybe talk about that more in general?
Sure, yeah. So the initiative, it's in the state of Oregon, and it's IP34, which I would encourage anybody to Google Oregon IP34. It's going to come up. So anybody interested in really learning a little bit more about it, I would want them to go check that out. But I think this is important for understanding where things are going here with psilocybin therapies and psychedelic-related drugs and treatments here. For a state to place an initiative tied to psilocybin therapy on its ballot, this is huge. This is quite momentous for the growth of our industry, because the way I look at it, it legitimizes it. And you look back at cannabis and where Colorado became the first state to legalize it here in the United States, and then sort of the dominoes sort of fell afterwards with other states following suit. I think you have a similar opportunity to maybe see the same thing play out here, where other states will start to follow in Oregon's footsteps. So this is important. And of course, at the core of it all is how important this is to Oregonians and the thousands of people living within that state that are suffering from depression, anxiety, addiction, that really have no other alternatives outside of conventional drugs that are, of course, being pushed by big pharma. This could potentially give them access to treatments and therapies that today they don't have access to, and that could potentially not just change their lives, but hopefully save them in many respects. So this is very important. And again, I can't thank, and I don't have enough appreciation here really for what Sherry Bessie Eckert and her husband Tom have done for this movement and getting this initiative on the ballot. It's really been tremendous. This has been their work here for the last 5 years. And so this has really been a big accomplishment for them. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, obviously we're talking about the domino effect, you know, extremely real.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you know, getting approval in one area makes approval in another area easier. You know, more people believe, obviously it keeps going forward that way. So I think that was awesome. I think you touched on you know, a great part of it. I think this was pretty good, you know, video wise. I think we touched on a lot of good stuff. You know, we could bring it back and of course say, you know, is there anything you want to say about the company, or even any updates you want to talk about with, you know, kind of psychedelic spotlight, things to come, maybe, you know, what people can look forward to?
Right, so today, as a matter of fact, we just released our second edition of our Microdose monthly newsletter, and we have a couple of really good features in there, one of which is an exclusive interview with Chi Psilocybin, who is a very prominent advocate for psychedelics and magic mushrooms. And so we had the opportunity to actually interview him, which I thought was really cool, and getting his take and his story on the industry and his passion for psilocybin and for magic mushrooms. And what I would like to certainly let people know is that this is just the first, I think, of many exclusive interviews that we intend on doing here over the next several months as we really build out our Microdose monthly newsletter, as well as our Psychedelic Spotlight website. It really is our intent here to really grow our network and really connect with as many leaders and advocates and people within this space right now and get their perspective and their thoughts, and really just help share their stories. Because again, there's so much going on right now on a lot of different fronts, you know, from the science and research side of things to the investment side. There's just so much, and kind of bringing it all together and just sharing those stories and those perspectives with everyone that comes to, you know, take a look at our platform. I think that's really exciting for us.
Yeah. No, hey, newsletters are awesome. You know, a lot of people obviously don't want to go to the website every day. Getting an email is great. And hey, exclusive interviews, that's fantastic. If you're, you know, of course, looking at the psychedelic industry, hearing interviews like this are what gets you to the next level. That's what really improves your knowledge and can help you make better decisions, whether it's investing or even just, you know, participating in the industry. So I think that was fantastic. You know, is there anything else you want to say before we kind of end it? You know, I think we can definitely do a bunch of videos talking about updates you guys are making to the website and some other stuff. But I think this was fantastic. Covered the company, covered some of the industry stuff. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, nothing really. I think we covered mostly everything that I really wanted to express here. So I'm looking forward to doing future interviews and kind of covering some more of a lot of different topics, a lot of different things to cover. So I'm looking forward to being able to get into that with you.
Yeah, no, perfect. I mean, you touch on transparency as the most important thing. I think it's great that we're doing these weekly interviews. You know, for anyone watching this, feel free, anything in the psychedelic space or even potentially cannabis space, whatever, throw it down below. Hey, if David wants to answer it, we'll make sure we get it in future videos. You know, we're here. We do want to interact with people, so let us know if there's anything that you want covered. We can throw it in. David, thanks for joining me. See you next week.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.